The first light that lingers. Have you ever woken up to that golden sliver of sunlight slipping through your curtains? The kind that catches the dust motes dancing like forgotten dreams, and for just a heartbeat, everything feels possible again. That's how this morning found me, curled under the faded quilt my grandmother stitched back in her Kentucky kitchen, the one with the wildflower patterns that always smelled faintly of lavender and home. I lay there, not rushing, not scrolling through the endless feed of perfect lives on my phone, but just breathing in the quiet. You know those mornings, don't you? The ones where the coffee's brewing downstairs, and the world outside your window in this sprawling American suburb hums with the distant rumble of school buses and neighbors firing up their grills for an early weekend ritual. It's the little things that pull us back, isn't it? Like the way the steam rises from your mug, carrying that rich, earthy promise of a fresh start. I remember a time, not so long ago, when mornings like this felt like intruders. I'd wake up with that hollow ache in my chest, the one left from years of pouring myself into a marriage that unraveled like an old sweater, thread by thread, during those long Wisconsin winters where the snow buried everything, including the parts of me I thought I'd lost. Back then, joy was a word I read in self-help books at the local bookstore, the kind with cozy armchairs and the faint scent of cinnamon from the cafe next door. I'd flip through pages on women's retreats in the Berkshires, dreaming of escaping to hot yoga sessions under autumn leaves, but deep down, I was just a woman in her 40s, juggling PTA meetings and a job that drained the color from my days. Gratitude? It sounded like a luxury I couldn't afford, like those fancy brunches with mimosa toast at the corner cafe in Chicago, where everyone else seemed to have it figured out. But here's the whisper I want to share with you today, sister, because that's what we are, aren't we? Women who've walked through the fire of empty nests, career pivots that left us questioning our worth, or the quiet betrayals that come with lifelong friendships fading like summer fireflies. That first light, that sliver through the curtains, it's not just chance. It's a reminder that you've made it through another night, that your heart, battered as it may be, still beats with a rhythm that's uniquely yours. I felt it that morning, letting my breath slow, not in some scripted meditation, but just existing. Inhale the cool air from the open window, carrying hints of fresh-cut grass from the neighbor's lawnmower ritual. Exhale the weight of yesterday's worries, the unpaid bills stacking up on the kitchen counter, the echo of a child's laughter now miles away at college in California. As I sat up, the sheets whispering against my skin, I let myself trace the lines on my hands, the ones etched from years of kneading dough for Thanksgiving pies, holding my husband's hand through his illness, and wiping tears from my own face in the dim light of a bathroom mirror at 3 a.m. These hands, they've carried so much, and in that moment, a soft warmth bloomed, not forced, but earned. Gratitude isn't about listing blessings like items on a grocery receipt. It's about feeling the fullness in the spaces that once held only ache. Think of your own hands, the ones that arranged flowers for a book club potluck last spring, or typed frantic emails during that promotion chase that almost broke you. They're proof of your quiet endurance, the kind we women share over late-night wine chats on front porches, under strings of fairy lights that mimic the stars we used to wish on as girls. I rose slowly, feet touching the cool hardwood floor, the kind that creaks like an old friend telling stories. Outside, the American dream unfolded in its messy glory, a minivan pulling out for the school run, a jogger in neon sneakers pounding the pavement towards some personal best, and me? I stepped into it, not as the woman who'd lost her way after the divorce papers were signed in a sterile lawyer's office downtown, but as someone rediscovering the joy in the ordinary. It was in the sip of coffee, black and bold like the jazz spilling from my radio on Saturday mornings, evoking those smoky clubs in New Orleans I'd visited once, before life got so serious. Joy crept in like that, unannounced but persistent. It said, "You've grieved enough. Now let me in." That warmth spread, filling the corners of my room, touching the framed photo of my daughter at her high school graduation, cap tassel swinging like a pendulum of pride and letting go. I whispered to myself, not out loud, but in the language of the soul, thank you for this breath, this beat, this being. And oh, how it echoed back, amplifying the joy that had been hiding, waiting for permission to unfurl. It's the same permission I give you now, in this shared space between us. Let it linger, that first light. Let it remind you that joy isn't something you chase across state lines to wellness weekends in Sedona. It's the dawn choosing you every single time. As the morning unfolded, I felt it settle, not as a fleeting guest, but as a companion, ready to walk with me through the day's unfolding script. Errands at the farmer's market, a phone call with my sister about her latest art show in Brooklyn, the simple act of watering the roses that bloomed defiantly against the fence. In the quiet of that room, I realized something profound. We've all got these stories, don't we? The ones where we rebuilt from the ashes of a moved cross-country after a breakup, or found solace in community choir practices that filled church basements with harmonies of hope. Joy, it turns out, is the thread that stitches us back together, one sunrise at a time. And as I stood there, arms stretching toward the ceiling like a quiet hallelujah, I knew this was just the beginning, a reawakening, soft and sure, to the happiness that had always been waiting, patient as a mother's love. Echoes of a softer awakening. There's something about the way the world pauses just before you fully open your eyes, isn't there? That suspended breath between sleep and wakefulness, where the remnants of dreams cling like dew on a spider's web, sparkling with possibility. I slipped into that space this morning, not in my bed this time, but on the worn wicker chair on my back porch, the one overlooking the community garden where neighborhood women gather every Sunday after church services, trading seedlings and stories of harvest, both literal and figurative. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of damp earth and the faint, sweet tang of honeysuckle climbing the trellis, reminders of those southern summers I spent as a girl in Georgia, chasing fireflies until my lungs ached with laughter. Waking up hasn't always been gentle for me. There were seasons, long and shadowed, when the alarm buzzed like an unwelcome intruder, pulling me from nights fractured by memories of my father's passing, the way his recliner sat empty in the living room during those first Thanksgivings without him. I'd stare at the ceiling, tracing cracks that mirrored the ones in my heart, wondering if joy was a myth peddled in glossy magazines at the checkout line of our local Piggly Wiggly. Middle age crept in then, with its subtle thefts, the mirror reflecting lines around my eyes from late shifts at the hospital, the quiet house after my kids flew to their own nests in Seattle and Austin. American life, with its promise of picket fences and endless opportunity, sometimes feels like a treadmill, doesn't it? Running toward milestones like women's networking luncheons in sleek conference rooms, only to arrive breathless and unchanged. But this morning, as the first birdsong pierced the hush, a cardinal's bold trill like nature's own alarm clock, I let myself linger in the echo of awakening. No rush to the kitchen for the ritual of pancakes on Shrove Tuesday. No mental checklist of carpools and conference calls. Just the soft rise and fall of my chest, drawing in the promise of dew-kissed air that nourishes something deeper than lungs. I thought of you, out there in your own corner of this vast country, maybe in a high-rise in Manhattan, sipping tea while the city awakens with honks and hurried footsteps, or in a ranch-style home in Colorado where the mountains stand sentinel against the dawn. We've all known those echoes, the ones that whisper back the hurts we've carried, the sting of a promotion passed over because you're too much mother now, or the hollow ring of a holiday table missing one voice, one presence. In that porch chair, with my robe wrapped tight against the chill, I allowed the echoes to soften. They weren't demands for perfection, but invitations to remember. Remember the time, years back, when I drove alone cross-country after the divorce, stopping at diners. In the Midwest, where waitresses with kind eyes and coffee refills shared tales of their own reinventions. Joy echoed there in the clink of silverware and the warmth of a shared plate of apple pie, proving that happiness isn't hoarded, it's savored in the spaces between. I closed my eyes, not to escape, but to invite it closer, the sensation of sunlight warming my eyelids, the distant laughter of kids on bikes circling the block, evoking block party barbecues where we women swap recipes for peach cobbler and secrets for surviving empty calendars. That softer awakening unfolded like a letter from an old friend, one you'd lost touch with but never forgotten. It carried scents of vanilla from the candle flickering on my side table, memories of baking Christmas cookies with my mother, her hands guiding mine through the flour-dusted chaos, teaching me that joy hides in the mess. And as it bloomed, I felt it ripple outward, touching the edges of my story. The volunteer shifts at the local women's shelter, where stories of resilience mirror my own, or the quiet thrill of a solo hike in the Smoky Mountains, where the trail's end revealed vistas that stole my breath and returned it fuller. These echoes aren't echoes of loss, they're harmonies, layering over the discords of life, reminding us that we've endured the moves, the goodbyes, the what-ifs that keep us up during power outages from summer storms. I shifted in the chair, feet brushing the flagstone path lined with hostas that thrive despite the shade, much like us, blooming where we're planted. Gratitude echoed then, not as a chore, but as a companion, wrapping around the parts of me that had hardened over decades of boardroom battles and bedtime stories. It's in these moments we reclaim our narratives, isn't it? Turning the page on chapters of doubt, written in the ink of late-night worries over wine with girlfriends at rooftop bars in Atlanta, where city lights blur into constellations of hope. Joy, that elusive bird, perched on my shoulder, its wings brushing my cheek with feathers soft as forgiveness. As the sun climbed higher, gilding the garden fence, I stood stretching into the day with arms that no longer carried invisible weights. The echoes faded into a steady hum, a soundtrack to the ordinary miracles, the mailman's cheerful wave, the text from my son sharing a sunset photo from his California coast. This awakening, softer than before, carried me forward, not towards some distant ideal, but into the fullness of now, where joy echoes eternally, a gentle call to keep listening, keep loving, keep living. Threads of hidden warmth. Picture this, the steam curling from your morning tea like a secret shared between old lovers, twisting upward in lazy spirals toward a ceiling fan that hums a lullaby from your childhood bedroom in rural Ohio. That's the thread I followed this morning, wrapped in a knit shawl my aunt crocheted during her recovery from hip surgery, each stitch a testament to hands that refuse to idle even in pain. I settled at the scarred oak table in my breakfast nook, the one that has borne witness to countless women's circles, impromptu gatherings, after yoga classes at the community center, where we sip chamomile and unravel the tangles of perimenopause moods and mortgage worries. Warmth hasn't always woven itself so easily into my days. There was a stretch in my 50s, after the company downsized and left me adrift in a sea of resumes, when that inner glow felt as distant as the northern lights I'd only seen in travel blogs from Alaskan cruises. Life in America, with its relentless pulse of Black Friday sales and 4th of July fireworks that light up small-town skies, can fray those threads, pulling us toward exhaustion rather than embrace. I'd sit at this very table, staring at the frost patterns on the window during January blizzards, remembering the warmth of my wedding day in a sun-dappled orchard in upstate New York, only to feel its absence like a draft through cracked panes. Joy? It was buried under layers of shoulds, should be thinner for the beach weekends in Florida, should be more ambitious for the women's leadership seminars in D.C. Yet this morning, as the first threads of light wove through the blinds, casting golden lattices on the tabletop, I let them pull me gently. No grand gestures, just the simple act of cradling that mug, feeling the ceramic's heat seep into my palms, awakening nerves that had gone numb from years of gripping steering wheels on cross-state drives to visit aging parents. It's these hidden warmths that heal us, isn't it? The ones tucked into the folds of everyday rituals, like the annual book club pilgrimage to the Hay Festival in North Carolina, where authors' words wrap around us like Afghans against evening chill. I traced the rim of my cup, inhaling the bergamot notes that transported me to a long-ago trip to a tea plantation in South Carolina, where the air hummed with cicadas and possibility, and I danced barefoot in the grass with strangers who became sisters for a weekend. That warmth threaded deeper, looping through memories I'd kept folded away. The birth of my first grandchild in a bustling maternity ward in Denver, her tiny fingers curling around mine like a promise of continuity. The quiet victory of paying off the house after double shifts at the diner, celebrating with a solo bubble bath scented with lavender oil from the farmer's market. These threads aren't flawless. They're knotted with the rough yarns of loss, like the unraveling of my closest friendship over a misunderstood email during pandemic isolations when virtual coffee dates couldn't bridge the miles. But in their imperfection, they hold a profound heat, one that radiates from the core, reminding me that joy is woven from the scraps we once thought worthless. I leaned back, the chair sighing in sympathy, and let the warmth spread to my shoulders, tense from hauling groceries home after. Spin classes that promised transformation but delivered only sweat. To my heart, scarred from the biopsy that came back clear but shook me to my foundations. Outside, the neighborhood stirred, a dog walker's whistle piercing the air, the sizzle of bacon from next door signaling the start of lazy brunches that stretch into afternoons of porch swings and gossip about the latest community theater production. It's in these communal threads we find our strength. Women linking arms at breast cancer walks in pink hats, chanting affirmations that echo like war cries turned to whispers. As the sun strengthened, burning off the morning mist, I felt the warmth unfurl, a tapestry draping over the table's scars, turning them into patterns of beauty. Gratitude threaded through it all, not as a needle's prick, but as the soft pull of completion. A stitch here for the laughter shared at girls' nights out in Nashville honky-tonks. A loop there for the tears shed in therapy sessions via Zoom from my couch. Joy emerged, not as a blaze, but as this steady glow illuminating the paths we'd walked alone and together. Road trips along Route 66 with college roommates, now scattered but forever linked. Volunteer days at soup kitchens in Chicago winters, serving bowls that warmed more than bodies. Standing to rinse my mug, water rushing like a cleansing river, I carried that hidden warmth with me, a portable hearth against the day's demands. It's the thread that binds us from coast to coast through seasons of sowing and reaping. Let it weave through you too, sister, turning the ordinary into something sacred, the broken into whole. In its embrace, joy isn't hidden. It's the very fabric of who we are becoming. Whispers from the quiet core, deep in the hush of your own heartbeat. Have you ever heard it? That subtle murmur, like wind through cattails along a Michigan lakeshore at dusk, carrying secrets only the water knows. I tuned into it this morning, cross-legged on the yoga mat unrolled in my living room, the one patterned with mandalas that remind me of the artisan markets in Santa Fe, where women haggle over turquoise jewelry and swap tales of desert solstice gatherings. The room was still, save for the tick of the grandfather clock inherited from my great-aunt, its pendulum swinging like a metronome to the rhythm of lives long past. The core of me hasn't always whispered so kindly. There were years in my 40s, post the twins leaving for their gap years backpacking through Europe, when silence roared with accusations. Why hadn't I traveled more? Built that side hustle into a thriving Etsy shop of handmade soaps, scented with wildflowers from Appalachian trails. American womanhood, with its siren call of empowerment summits in Silicon Valley and Mommy and Me Pilates in LA suburbs, often leaves us hollowed out, chasing echoes of fulfillment in TED Talks streamed late at night. I'd sit in that very spot, mat forgotten, knees drawn to chest, listening to the core's complaints, the ache of a body changing without consent, hips widening like invitations to self-compassion I wasn't ready to accept, the sting of holiday cards from couples who'd stayed the course, while mine veered into amicable splits over backyard fire pits in autumn. But today, as dawn's fingers pried open the blinds, I leaned into the quiet core, letting its whispers lap at the edges of my awareness. No forcing words or poses, just presence, the way my breath synced with the distant hum of a leaf blower in the cul-de-sac, a suburban symphony to new beginnings. It's from this center that healing flows, isn't it? Slow as molasses from a Virginia farm stand, sweetening the bitterness of board meetings where your ideas were footnotes, or empty theater seats after your daughter's off-Broadway debut that you couldn't afford to attend. I closed my eyes, feeling the core pulse, a gentle thrum that echoed the drum circles at women's wellness retreats in the Adirondacks, where bare feet stamped earth and voices rose in raw, unfiltered song. Those whispers carried fragments of my story, pieced together like a quilt from auctioned heirlooms. The thrill of my first published poem in a local literary journal. Words born from insomniac scribbles during chemo waits for a friend. The serenity of fly fishing on the Snake River in Idaho. Line casting arcs of hope against current regrets. Joy stirred there in the core's vault. Not a fireworks display over Hudson River cruises, but a steady ember fanned by memories of midnight baking sessions with neighbors during power outages, flour-dusted counters birthing loaves that fed body and soul. It's the quiet that reveals these treasures, stripping away the noise of diet fads pushed in glossy ads and career ladders that splinter under weight. As the light shifted, painting walls in honeyed tones, the whispers grew bolder, weaving through the core's chambers. Gratitude hummed along, a low bass note underscoring the highs. Thanks for the scar on my knee from a biking mishap on the C&O Canal towpath. A badge of adventures reclaimed after widowhood. For the laughter bubbling up during Zoom reunions with sorority sisters. Toasting virtual margaritas to decades of triumphs and tumbles. This core, once a storm-tossed sea, now cradled calm, inviting me to rest in its depths, where joy isn't pursued but inhabited. Like sinking into a porch hammock on lazy July afternoons. Book forgotten as fireflies wink conspiratorially. I unfolded slowly, spine aligning with the pull of gravity and grace, carrying those whispers outward. They brushed against the photos on my mantle. Grandkids' crayon art from summer camps in the Ozarks. My own reflection in a frame from a milestone birthday bash at a rooftop lounge in Miami, surrounded by women who'd weathered my storms. The quiet core speaks to us all, bridging the divides of red states and blue, urban hustle and rural repose. Let its murmurs guide you, sister, through the days. Tapestry, coffee runs to indie roasters, heartfelt texts to long-lost loves. In its voice, joy finds its truest echo, a lifelong companion whispering, "You are enough, right here." Blooms in the shadowed garden. Ever catch yourself staring at a wilting bloom in your window box, wondering if it remembers the rain that once made it thrive? That's me this morning, kneeling in the dirt of my side yard, fingers sifting soil still cool from last night's sprinkler cycle, the one that mimics the gentle patter of summer showers during county fair evenings in Iowa. Petunias nod nearby, their petals bruised but budding anew, much like the garden parties we host in backyards across the heartland. Tables laden with potato salad and pitchers of lemonade, where conversations bloom under paper lanterns strung like stars. My own garden of the soul has known shadows aplenty. In the wake of turning 50, after the nest emptied and echoed with the ghosts of prom dress fittings and college application marathons. I wandered its paths feeling barren, thorns snagging at hems of self-doubt. Life's American tableau, painted with strokes of drive-through fundraisers for Little League teams and empowerment workshops in Austin co-working spaces, can overshadow the soil's quiet fertility. I'd weed half-heartedly, pulling at regrets like bindweed, the road not taken to culinary school in New Orleans, the friendships pruned by moves from coast to coast, leaving roots dangling in sterile pots. Yet as sunlight dappled the leaves this dawn, I lingered among the blooms, letting their shadowed resilience speak. No hurried pruning, just communion, the earth yielding under my touch, releasing scents of turned soil that evoke childhood Easter egg hunts in Carolina meadows, baskets overflowing with promise. Healing gardens in us this way, doesn't it? From the undergrowth of miscarried dreams, like the novel I shelved after rejections piled higher than unread emails, sprout tendrils of joy, delicate but determined. I recalled the weekend I spent at a botanical symposium in Portland, surrounded by women botanists trading tips on heirloom tomatoes and heart-mending, their laughter fertilizing parched spirits. Those blooms in shadow taught me tenderness, to the peony that survived a late frost, mirroring my rebound from a slip disc that sidelined dance classes I'd loved since prom nights in Texas ballrooms, to the marigold edging the path, bold against encroaching grass, much like my voice rising at town hall meetings on women's health initiatives. Gratitude rooted deep then, anchoring in the loam of lived layers. Thanks for the calluses from a volunteering at urban farms in Detroit, hands blistered but heart full, for the solitary evenings tending window herbs during quarantine, their green whispers companioning isolation. As bees hummed their industrious hymns, drawn to nectar hidden in folds, joy unfolded petal by petal, not in grand displays but intimate revelations. It was in the UC surprise lily pushing through cracked clay, echoing my surprise promotion after years in the shadows of male colleagues, in the shared harvest with neighbors over fence-line chats, jars of jam-sealing bonds forged in mutual vulnerability. This garden, shadowed yet abundant, mirrors our journeys, from bookended by minivan carpools to liberated by empty garages, filled instead with yoga mats and journals from indie stationery shops in Brooklyn. Rising with soil-dusted knees, I brushed away the dirt, carrying its earthy promise inside. Blooms thrive in shadow, turning scarcity to splendor, much as we do at retreats in Big Sur cliffs, waves crashing anthems to renewal. Let your garden whisper its secrets, sister. Water the wilted with tears turned to rain. Trust the dark to cradle light. In its verdant heart, joy blossoms eternal, a defiant petal against the inevitable dusk, ripples of unseen rivers. What if joy was a river you couldn't see, flowing beneath the concrete of your daily commute, carving canyons in the quiet bedrock of your being? I dipped into its current this morning, standing barefoot in the shallow basin of my clawfoot tub, water trickling from the faucet like the first notes of a folk tune at a bluegrass festival in the Smokies. Droplets raced down porcelain, pooling in eddies that reflected fragments of my face, lines etched by wind-whipped drives along Pacific Coast Highway during solo soul-searching road trips. Rivers unseen have shaped me, often turbulently. Through the rapids of my late 30s, when infertility currents pulled at my marriage's moorings, stranding us on banks of unspoken grief during fertility clinic waits in Boston suburbs, I learned to navigate without maps. The American rush, tailgate parties in football-crazed college towns, ambition-fueled brunches in San Francisco tech cafes, can dam those inner flows, leaving us parched amid plenty. I trace the tub's curves, remembering the overflow of tears after negative tests, joy a distant mirage shimmering over desert expanses of doubt. But this morning, as steam rose in veils, I invited the ripples, letting them lap at ankles, soothing calluses from power-walking loops around Central Park during visits to my city-dwelling niece. No damning words, just surrender. The water's murmur, evoking Mississippi steamboat cruises I'd taken post-divorce, paddle wheels churning history and healing into foam. It's in these unseen rivers we find our course, isn't it? Meandering through losses like the job furlough during economic dips, emerging richer for the detours to craft fairs in Vermont, where handmade pottery held space for my evolving story. Ripples carried echoes, the swell of pride at my son's wedding on a Napa vineyard terrace, vows exchanged under grapevines heavy with forgiveness, the undertow of releasing old patterns during sweat lodge ceremonies at native-led retreats in South Dakota, steam unlocking knots I'd carried since girlhood. Gratitude flowed then, a tributary merging with the main. Thanks for the driftwood wisdom from widow support groups in Phoenix, stories polished smooth by shared sorrow, for the lazy floats on lazy summer inner tubes down lazy rivers in Florida, laughter bubbling freer than the current. As the basin filled, mirroring sky through the frosted window, joy rippled outward, cresting waves that touched toes to temples. It wasn't the torrent of sold-out stadium concerts, but the steady stream nourishing hidden aquifers. A whispered confession over phone lines to a college confidant, bridging decades. The quiet thrill of a published op-ed on midlife reinvention in a national magazine. Words cascading into inboxes of kindred spirits. This river, unseen yet undeniable, propels us from boardroom negotiations to bedside vigils, from empty nest silences to symphony hall ovations with empty seats beside. Stepping out, towel soft against skin, I carried the ripple's momentum, a subtle sway in my step toward the day's unfolding. Rivers carve without apology, sculpting grace from granite. Let them move you, sister, through urban eddies and rural bends alike. In their unseen grace, joy flows boundless, an eternal current inviting you home. Feathers of forgotten flight. Do you remember the weightlessness of swinging from a tire on an old oak, legs kicking skyward as if defying gravity's grudge? I reclaimed a feather of that flight this morning, perched on the edge of my attic stairs, surrounded by boxes of yellowed letters and dance recital costumes from the 80s, the air thick with cedar from mothballs and memories of county fair midway rides in Illinois. A single feather, shed from some long-gone pillow, drifted to my palm, light as a promise unkept. Flight has eluded me in feathers' worth of falls. After my 40s folded into a cascade of caregiving, nights blurring into days shuttling between my mother's assisted living in Florida and my own therapy appointments in rainy Seattle, I felt clipped, wings furled against the gales of guilt and goodbye. Our cultural whirlwinds, flash mob fundraisers for breast cancer research in Times Square, high-stakes pitches at women entrepreneur mixers in Austin, whisk feathers away, leaving us grounded in the grit of have-tos. I'd sift through those boxes, fingers trembling over ticket stubs from Broadway shows attended alone, joy a bird I'd caged in pursuit of stability. Yet as moted light filtered through the dormer, I held that feather, letting its barbs brush skin, evoking the soar of parasailing over Lake Tahoe during a girl's getaway, harnessed but heart unbound. No frantic flapping, just glide. The attic's hush amplifying the distant coo of mourning doves outside, harbingers of release. Feathers of forgotten flight remind us we're airier than we know, lifting from the mire of missed opportunities, like the art class I abandoned for a practical degree, only to rediscover brushes in retirement workshops at community colleges in Sarah, Oregon. They fluttered with Vinitz, the uplift of mentoring a young barista at the corner cafe in Portland, her dreams mirroring my sidelined ones, the downdraft of empty arenas post-pandemic, yet rising in virtual poetry slams that connected souls across quarantine divides. Gratitude perched then, a soft landing. Thanks for the thermal drafts of sisterhood at book festivals in Miami, pages turning like wings in breeze. For the free fall thrill of zip lining through Costa Rican canopies on a milestone birthday, screams turning to song. As dust danced in sunbeams, joy took wing, not in tempests but thermals, buoying me through attic's trove, a faded photo of skydiving tandem with a stranger who became a lifelong pen pal, tandem trust teaching, solo grace. This flight, feathered and frail, spans our skies, from rooftop yoga in urban lofts to stargazing blankets in Wyoming fields. Let forgotten feathers find you, sister, tickling doubts to flight. In their whisper light touch, joy soars, an unclipped horizon calling you upward, hearth glow in the half-light. In the half-light of pre-dawn, when shadows cuddle corners like shy lovers at a harvest dance, have you felt the hearth's pull? I kindled it this morning by the stone fireplace in my den, logs crackling softly as if recounting tales from Adirondack cabin weekends, embers winking like fireflies in a mason jar from childhood, capture games in Pennsylvania fields. The glow painted walls in amber, warming the spines of journals stacked on the mantel, each entry a coal of confession. Half-lights have hosted my hearth's dimmings. During the lean years of my early 60s, when retirement loomed like a fogged windshield on a Maine coastal drive, the fire sputtered under drafts of financial fears and phantom pains from old fractures, literal and otherwise. America's hearthside myths, Thanksgiving feast with extended kin in multi-generational homes, fireside chats at leadership retreats in Aspen, belie the chills of solo suppers and echoing halls post-kids' departures to bustling hubs like Denver and Dallas. I'd poke at ashes, stirring ghosts of holiday sing-alongs silenced by distance, joy banked low beneath layers of someday logs. But as flames licked higher, fed by kindling from pruned branches of my backyard arbor, I basked in the glow, no stoking for spectacle, just steady burn. The scent of pine sap evoking Yule logs at church bazaars in Wisconsin, where mittened hands exchanged ornaments and optimism. Hearths heal in half-light, don't they? Coaxing sparks from soot, like the flicker of hope in online dating profiles navigated after widowhood. Profiles blooming into coffee dates at indie roasters in Nashville. I leaned closer, warmth seeping through flannel, thawing the frost of forgotten passions. The guitar restrung for open mics at local pubs, chords strumming stories of roads less traveled. Glow carried hearth tales, the blaze of camaraderie at quilting bees in rural Kansas. Needles threading narratives of endurance, the smolder of quiet victories, like completing a marathon in my age group at Boston's storied paths, metal heavy as healed hurts. Gratitude crackled then, popping like corn at block parties. Thanks for the ember of a surprise visit from grandchildren. S'mores, skewered over flames, turning nights magical. For the sustained heat of book club debates in cozy libraries, words igniting minds long dimmed. As the half-light yielded to full dawn, joy's hearth roared gentle, illuminating dens, nooks. A knitted throw from a craft fair swap meet, fibers woven with well wishes. The photo of a solo trip to Yellowstone geysers, steam rising like inner fire unchained. This glow, intimate as a lover's breath, warms our vigils, from dawn patrols of worry to dusk's grateful surrender. Tend your half-light hearth, sister. Let it blaze belief in boundless tomorrows. In its radiant core, peace settles, a timeless flame flickering, yes to all that remains. Dawn's gentle promise. And now, as the arc of this morning's light bends toward noon, carrying the weight of our shared unveilings, let it settle into you like a well-worn letter read by lamplight. I've walked these paths with you, From the first hesitant glow to the hearth's steady burn, each step a testament to the joy that waits, not in fanfare, but in the faithful rhythm of your own unfolding. You've held space for these whispers, sister, in the quiet chambers of your heart, where rivers run deep and gardens guard their secrets. May this dawn's promise linger, a soft assurance that the hurts you've carried have forged a resilience brighter than any sunrise. Breathe it in, the possibility, the peace, the unshakable belief that joy is your birthright, blooming eternally in the garden of now. Carry it forward, into the laughter of afternoon teas with friends, the embrace of evening sunsets over your own horizon. You are held, you are whole, you are the light. Thank you for journeying here with me. Let's meet again in the next whisper.